Imagine walking into retirement with $1 million in your investment account. Now imagine that 15 years later, two people who started with that exact same amount are living completely different lives. One is planning dream vacations, spoiling grandchildren, and never worrying about the next market headline. The other is checking their portfolio every morning with a knot in their stomach, wondering whether they'll have to sell the family home before they are 80. Here's the surprising part. Neither person earned a higher return. Neither inherited extra money. Neither suddenly became a financial genius. The difference came down to one decision they made in the first few years of retirement. A decision so small that most people never think about it until it's too late. And if you're planning to retire in the next decade or you're already retired, that decision could matter far more than whether your portfolio earns 8% or 10%. Because despite what social media promises, there isn't a magical withdrawal percentage that works for everyone. Some people can comfortably spend far more than the traditional guidelines suggest. Others can get into trouble even while following them perfectly. So today, we're going to separate myth from reality. We look at why so many retirement strategies fail, why average investment returns can be incredibly misleading, and most importantly, the framework professional planners increasingly rely on to help retirees enjoy their money without constantly fearing they'll outlive it. By the end of this video, you'll probably stop asking, what's the perfect withdrawal rate? Instead, you'll be asking a much better question. And that question could completely change how you think about retirement. Most people think retirement planning is simply a math problem. If you have $1 million and your investments historically earn around 10% per year, it seems reasonable to assume you can spend a healthy portion of that income while letting the rest continue growing. On paper, it sounds almost effortless. But retirement isn't lived on paper. It's lived through recessions, through inflation, through bear markets, through unexpected medical bills, through years when the stock market reminds everyone that investing is never a straight line. And that's exactly where many retirement plans quietly fall apart. The mistake isn't that people underestimate market returns. It's that they misunderstand how those returns actually arrive. Think about climbing a mountain. If someone tells you the average elevation gain is gentle, that doesn't mean every step is uphill at the same angle. Some sections are steep, some are flat, some force you to climb down before climbing higher. Investing works much the same way. The average return over decades tells only part of the story. The journey itself is anything but average. Let's use a simple example. Picture two investors who each retire with exactly $1 million. Over the next 20 years, both experience the exact same average annual return. At first glance, you'd expect their outcomes to be nearly identical. But they're not. Why? Because one investor experiences strong market growth during the first several years of retirement. The other retires just before a major downturn. Eventually, both portfolios generate the same long-term average. Yet one account grows comfortably while the other struggles to recover. How is that possible? Because averages hide timing. And in retirement, timing suddenly becomes one of the most important variables you'll ever face. While you're working, market declines often help you. You're buying shares at lower prices through your retirement contributions. Every paycheck lets you purchase more investments when prices are down. Ironically, bad markets can become opportunities. Retirement flips that equation upside down. Instead of buying shares, you're selling them. Instead of welcoming lower prices, you're withdrawing money while your investments may already be down. That simple shift changes everything. Let's pause for a second because this idea is incredibly important. Most financial conversations focus on how much your investments earn. Very few focus on when those returns happen. But those first years after retirement carry enormous weight. Imagine taking money from a garden. If you harvest only ripe fruit while the trees remain healthy, the garden continues producing for decades. But if you begin cutting branches during a drought, recovery becomes much harder. Your investment portfolio behaves similarly. Selling investments after major market declines permanently reduces the number of shares left to participate in the eventual recovery. Even if markets rebound strongly later, your portfolio now has fewer assets doing the heavy lifting. That's why two retirees with nearly identical long-term returns can end up with dramatically different financial futures. The numbers may average out, life doesn't. Here's something else that surprises many people. The retirement strategies making headlines online often rely on perfect assumptions. They assume investors remain calm. They assume inflation behaves. They assume markets cooperate. They assume spending never changes. Real life rarely gives us all four. Maybe inflation jumps unexpectedly. Maybe healthcare expenses arrive sooner than expected. Maybe you decide to help a grandchild through college. Maybe the market enters a multi-year slump just after your retirement party. None of those events are unusual. They're exactly the kinds of situations retirement planning should prepare for. Which raises an important question. If relying on one fixed withdrawal percentage isn't the answer, what is? The solution isn't necessarily spending less. In fact, many retirees unnecessarily deprive themselves because they're afraid of running out of money. Others overspend during strong markets, assuming the good times will last forever. Both approaches share the same flaw. They're rigid. And retirement rewards adaptability far more than rigidity. In the next section, we'll explore the surprisingly simple mindset shift that allows many retirees to enjoy higher income during good years while dramatically improving the odds that their savings last for decades. That single shift may matter more than chasing higher investment returns. Part 2. The biggest surprise in retirement planning isn't that markets are unpredictable. It's that your spending doesn't have to be. Most people think of retirement income as a paycheck. Every month, the same amount shows up no matter what's happening in the economy. That mindset works while you're employed because someone else is generating the income. Once you're retired, your portfolio becomes your paycheck. And unlike an employer, the market doesn't promise steady raises or smooth performance. Trying to force your investments to behave like a salary is where many retirement plans begin to crack. The retirees who consistently succeed often think differently. They don't ask, how much can I safely withdraw forever? Instead, they ask, how can I make smart decisions based on what's happening today without sacrificing tomorrow? That subtle change in thinking makes an enormous difference. Let's imagine two neighbors. Both retire around the same time. Both have similar portfolios. Both have similar lifestyles. Then the market suddenly falls 25%. The first retiree ignores everything. The spending plan never changes. The expensive vacation still happens. The luxury purchases continue. Every withdrawal stays exactly the same because changing the plan feels like failure. The second retiree responds differently. They don't panic. They don't sell everything. They simply delay replacing the SUV. They postpone a kitchen remodel. Instead of taking 3 large trips, they take one. Restaurant dinners become home-cooked meals for a few months. Nothing dramatic, nothing painful, just temporary adjustments. Then something interesting happens. When markets recover, those postponed expenses often come back. The vacations happen, the upgrades happen, life returns to normal. But because those temporary cuts occurred during the most vulnerable period, the portfolio has far more opportunity to recover. That's the difference between reacting emotionally and responding strategically. Here's the mistake many people make. They believe flexibility means living with constant sacrifice. It doesn't. Think of it like driving a car. You don't hold the steering wheel perfectly still for 500 miles. You make dozens of tiny adjustments without even noticing. Those adjustments aren't signs that you're lost. They're the reason you stay on the road. Retirement works the same way. Small corrections prevent large problems. A tiny spending adjustment during a difficult market can eliminate the need for massive cuts years later. Ironically, being slightly flexible today often protects your freedom tomorrow. This idea is becoming increasingly common among professional financial planners. Instead of treating retirement income like a fixed contract, many now view it as a living plan. The destination stays the same. The route changes when necessary. Imagine your investment portfolio grows significantly over several years. Does it make sense to continue living exactly the same way if your financial position has improved? Probably not. You might comfortably increase travel, help your children, donate more, enjoy hobbies you've postponed. Now flip the situation. Suppose markets experience a difficult stretch. Does temporarily slowing discretionary spending really reduce your quality of life? For many households, the answer is no, especially when those adjustments are planned instead of forced. That's the key. Planning, not panicking. One of the smartest exercises any future retiree can do has nothing to do with picking stocks. It's understanding where your money actually goes. Ask yourself a simple question. If your investments temporarily declined, which expenses absolutely must continue and which could comfortably wait? Housing, utilities, insurance, basic groceries, healthcare. Those usually belong in one category. Luxury travel, major home upgrades, expensive gifts, new vehicles, premium entertainment. Those often belong in another. Notice something. We're not talking about giving them up forever. We're simply identifying what can move if circumstances change. When you know that ahead of time, market downturns stop feeling like emergencies. They become manageable because you've already made the decisions while calm, not while watching frightening headlines. Here's another overlooked advantage of flexibility. It improves confidence. Many retirees spend less than they actually could, not because they need to, but because they're afraid. They worry that one wrong decision today will ruin the next 25 years. That fear can quietly steal the retirement they worked decades to build. Imagine saving diligently your entire career, only to spend retirement constantly asking yourself, can I afford this? That's not financial freedom, that's financial anxiety. A thoughtful spending framework replaces uncertainty with clarity. Instead of guessing, you have a plan. Instead of fearing every market decline, you understand how you'll respond. Confidence isn't created by predicting the future, it's created by preparing for multiple futures. Now, let's talk about another powerful tool that rarely gets enough attention: cash. Not because cash earns spectacular returns, it doesn't. Its job is something much more important: it buys time. Imagine markets fall sharply. If every dollar you need for living expenses must come from stocks that month, you are forced into difficult decisions. But what if your everyday expenses are already covered for the next year or two? Suddenly the pressure disappears. Your investments have room to recover. You aren't selling simply because the calendar says it's time to pay the bills. Think of cash as an emergency bridge. You hope you won't need it often, but when storms arrive, you'll be grateful it's already there. Sometimes the greatest value of cash isn't its return, it's the flexibility it provides. At this point, you might be wondering, if flexibility, planning, and cash reserves matter this much, does the withdrawal percentage even matter at all? It does, but probably not in the way most people think, because the real goal isn't finding one magical number. It's building a system that works through both bull markets and bear markets. And that's exactly what we'll explore next, because there's one mindset shift that separates retirees who constantly worry about money from those who confidently enjoy it, even when markets become unpredictable. Part 3. The biggest lesson in retirement planning isn't about percentages, it's about behavior. Two people can have identical portfolios, identical investment returns, and even identical retirement goals, yet experience completely different financial futures because of how they respond when conditions change. That's why chasing the perfect withdrawal rate is asking the wrong question. A better question is this: can my retirement plan adapt when life doesn't go according to plan? Because sooner or later, something unexpected will happen. Markets will fall, inflation will rise, healthcare costs may surprise you, family priorities may change. The retirees who succeed aren't the ones who predict every event. They are the ones who build a plan that's ready for uncertainty. Here's a simple way to think about it. Imagine your retirement as a long road trip across the country. Before leaving, you estimate how much fuel you'll need. You choose your route. You budget for hotels and food. But once the journey begins, do you refuse to make any changes? Of course not. If traffic appears, you take a different highway. If bad weather rolls in, you slow down. If you discover an incredible destination along the way, maybe you stay an extra day. The destination remains the same. The decisions along the journey become flexible. Retirement works exactly the same way. A rigid plan often breaks. A flexible plan bends and keeps moving forward. One of the most powerful habits you can develop is scheduling an annual financial check-in. Not every week, not every day, certainly not every time the market appears on the evening news. Just once each year. Review your spending, review your investments, review your goals. Ask yourself a few simple questions. Has my lifestyle changed? Have my essential expenses increased? Do I still have enough cash reserves? Has my portfolio grown enough to comfortably increase spending? Or should I pause some discretionary expenses until markets recover? Those questions take far less time than most people imagine. Yet answering them consistently can dramatically improve the longevity of your retirement savings. Good financial planning isn't about making hundreds of decisions. It's about making a handful of good decisions repeatedly. Another important truth rarely discussed online: not everyone needs the same retirement strategy. Someone receiving substantial social security benefits, a reliable pension, or rental income may depend much less on their investment portfolio. Their investments become a tool for enhancing lifestyle rather than paying every monthly bill. Someone else may rely almost entirely on investment income. Their margin for error is naturally smaller. Neither situation is better, they're simply different. That's why comparing your withdrawal rate to someone else's often creates unnecessary anxiety. Your retirement plan should reflect your income sources, your expenses, your goals, and your comfort with market volatility. Personal finance has always been exactly that: personal. There's another mistake worth avoiding: Many retirees become overly focused on preserving wealth while forgetting why they save it in the first place. Money is a tool, not a trophy. If you've spent 40 years building financial security, retirement shouldn't feel like a never ending exercise in saying no. The purpose of careful planning isn't to die with the largest possible investment account. It's to create a life with fewer financial worries and more meaningful experiences. Visit the places you've dreamed about. Spend time with family. Support causes you believe in. Enjoy hobbies you've postponed for decades. Those moments are part of the return on your investment too. Financial success isn't measured only by portfolio growth. It's also measured by the freedom your money creates. At the same time, enjoying retirement doesn't mean ignoring risk. The healthiest approach sits somewhere between fear and overconfidence. You don't assume markets will always rise, but you also don't assume disaster is around every corner. You prepare, you stay disciplined, you remain flexible, and you let your long-term plan, not short-term emotions, guide your decisions. Ironically, that's often what creates the confidence people are searching for. Confidence doesn't come from certainty. It comes from knowing you'll know what to do regardless of what happens next. So let's bring everything together. If you remember only one lesson from today's video, let it be this. There is no universal withdrawal rate that guarantees success. Not 4%, not 5%, not 7%. Those numbers are simply starting points. What truly determines whether your retirement savings last is the combination of thoughtful planning, disciplined investing, flexible spending, and consistent review. The percentage matters, but your behavior matters even more. Before we wrap up, I'd like to leave you with one challenge. Set aside 30 minutes this week. Write down every recurring expense. Separate what is essential from what is optional. Review your income sources. Estimate how much flexibility already exists inside your budget. You may discover you're in a stronger position than you thought, or you may identify small improvements that could dramatically strengthen your retirement plan for decades to come. Either outcome is valuable because clarity almost always leads to better financial decisions. If you found today's discussion helpful, consider subscribing. Every week, we break down retirement planning, investing, taxes, social security, and wealth building strategies into practical ideas you can actually use, not financial jargon or unrealistic promises. And I'd love to hear from you. If you were retiring tomorrow, what would give you the most confidence? A larger investment portfolio or a smarter spending strategy? Share your thoughts in the comments. Some of the best future videos come directly from your questions. Until next time, remember this. A successful retirement isn't built by finding the perfect number. It's built by making thoughtful decisions, staying adaptable, and allowing your money to support the life you worked so hard to create. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.